tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports podcast. I am here tonight for the RBLR Rowdies show specifically. And to cover the Rowdies, I have our usual co-host, Carlos. And, we always start this, Carlos, by asking how you're doing. I feel like I might know how you're doing, though. I feel like I have a good idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, you would be assuming right. I'm doing fantastic. Like, this has been such an awesome weekend, James.
Oh, you're doing fantastic. I thought you were doing terrible, though.
Oh,
Just
my
kidding.
bad. Yeah,
Just
no,
kidding,
in
of
that
course.
case, you're wrong. No. Yeah, no, this weekend has been fantastic. My Saturday was as great as a Saturday can be, honestly. Like, I started my day with I slept in, first of all, woke up, went to the Georgetown soccer game. The men's soccer team had a huge game against Xavier.
There we go.
We locked in the number 1 seed for the Big East tournament with that game. So great result there.
That's
Then
awesome.
what else did I do? I got lunch, hung out a while, watched the Rowdies game, which was obviously the highlight of my day. And then my fraternity hosted an event following up. So it was almost like the timing worked out perfectly. Rowdies won, and then Zeta Psi event. It was just a beautiful weekend. It really was. Sunday was a very sleepy day. And here we are on Monday evening talking about this weekend, talking about specifically the Rowdies. And James, really, like I think you could sense this before we even started recording. I'm so excited to talk about this game, so excited to talk about this upcoming game, next round of the playoffs. There really is a lot to talk about in what was definitely an eventful game. But again, as always, before we get into any of that, James, how was your weekend?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone could not tell, I was just joking there with Carlos because obviously I was able to take in the Rowdies game just like he was. I was able to go, unlike
Nice.
Carlos, though. And Eureka and I, the producer for RBLR Sports, we both watched this game from the stands. It was awesome. It was very emotional. I was up and down, and it's obvious that there's more riding on every single game when it's the playoffs. Like, I'm not breaking any ground by saying that, but man, did I feel it when I was out there. It was really great, and for us to take the lead and then give up the lead, but then be able to take it back. Oh man, and especially with a couple of other things that happened during the game, it was really sweet in the end. We're going to break all that down, though. So let's just go ahead and get started with the actual podcast related to the Rowdies here. On Saturday night, as I said, the Rowdies went out and beat the Miami FC 3-1 at Al Lang in front of a great crowd. Now, Carlos, you and I will each get 1 point for our predictions, but we do not get the full 3 points because we did not, either of us, guess the correct score. So unfortunate for both of us here. Now, the Rowdies will move on to the next round. They will be in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and we will be away to Memphis 901. We will be previewing that game later on, so obviously please stick around. There is a pretty good preview, if I do say so myself, as to how we could go about that game. A little note that we will touch on a little bit more, but Rico Rosarena is back with the team. He is available for selection, so that helps us out at the back, obviously. And before we get started with everything, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And please, of course, like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Now, Carlos, if you could please take us through the quick recap before we get into our actual questions and analysis so we can break this down.
Yeah, let's do it. From a very broad view, we'll go into the game real quick. And then, like you said, we'll talk about some of the specific aspects here right after. So let's start with the lineup here, as always. Breno in goal with Wyke, Castellanos, and Guillen making up the main part of the back line. Antley, Hilton, Law, and Dayon Harris made up your midfield, with Antley and Harris obviously playing as the wingers here. After that, you have Leo, Seba, and Lacava kind of making up our front three, with Lacava and Leo playing their respective wing positions. But again, Leo always kind of drifting into the central part of the field, doing his thing with the free roaming role that Neil's given him this season. The first half was definitely tense and feisty, I think is a good way to describe it. No goals were scored, but with both teams defending really well. There were a couple instances where I think the Rowdies looked to break through on goal. Really early on in the match, we had an opportunity. Miami shut down very well. There was also an instance with the referee, where the ball like deflected off the ref and almost led to a Guenzati goal, which would have been very controversial. So I'm almost glad we didn't score that goal, to be honest. In the second half, though, lots of goals would come. Actually, all the goals in this game would come in the second half. The Rowdies scored first off of a Leo Fernandez shot, which Guenzati finished off the rebound, followed by the Miami equalizer before we would score 2 more goals unanswered, including one Nicky Law rocket and a Sebastian Guenzati half volley in the box off of a corner kick. Really, really impressive set of goals for us. Really a good game. The crowd definitely got into it at moments where the ref, I think, was definitely losing control of the game at some points. Lots of instances, which I think we'll even mention here in a little bit. So I won't talk about that too much. But as always, Neil Collins getting the crowd amped up. Even Jake LaCava, who's usually a pretty tame character, was hyping the crowd up on his way to the bench in the second half. So really emotional game, like James said, both for the fans, but even more so for the players and Neil Collins and the coaching staff. Very, very exciting game. And I'm excited here to talk about this as we move on here into the questions and analysis. So, James, let's start with the very basic question as we break this game down, a little tactically from the fans' point of view here. What did we see that eventually led to this 3-1 win? I mean, I think the saying of, it was a game of 2 halves can be very applicable here. But I'm curious as to how you saw this game and how it led to a 3-1 win eventually for the good guys.
Yeah, I thought that it was definitely different from one half to the next, but there were some constants overall. A lot of talk leading into this game, including, I believe, on this podcast, was about Mark Segbers, the usual right wing back for the Miami FC. He is very prominent in terms of the attack for Miami, and he involves himself a lot on that side of the field, and maybe not less on the defensive side, but it's his priority to get forward when he has the ball at his feet. So we definitely did see that. Now, to counteract that, something that Eureka and I noticed immediately, I'm sure, Carlos, you said the same, but Dejon Harris was starting not in his usual position as like a right winger. Usually he would be very high and coming in often from the right. In this case, he was the left wing back, and he absolutely did stick on that left wing side. The only times that he really moved inward were when he and Leo Fernandez would switch spots, because the two of them did that a couple of times, including off of one play that led to a pretty good chance. But yeah, there were that was to counteract Mark Segbers, because if you have somebody who has that speed and has the ability to dribble to get in behind you, then it's going to put you on edge and maybe keep you a little bit farther back, a little bit more restrained. And on the other side, they had the left back, Aiden Stanley. Now, he did not get forward as much because it was obviously Mark Segbers' job to do that, where his winger on the right side would kind of, cut inside and help to apply pressure to our midfielders, Lewis Hilton in the midfield with his partner there. And they were trying to obviously get it forward, but he and Nicky Law were, pretty well held down, I would say. Hilton and Law were, they had a lot of trouble trying to build up through the center of the field, especially. Sure. The Rowdies do obviously like to attack down the wings, and that was a prominent portion of the game with Dejon Harris being involved. And, I really valued what Dejon Harris brought to this game, not just because Dejon Harris is good at the things he's good at, but it definitely helped with the dynamic that Miami usually keeps on their right side. So when we couldn't go down the center of the field and we had to go down either the right or the left, it really did mostly come down the left, and that was good to see. But Aiden Stanley, their left back, as I said, he was originally hanging back, and then he would push forward a little bit more and get involved a little bit in the second half. But that did allow us at certain times to create a numbers advantage, like when we won the ball, and usually through pressing. That was something that we did a lot. I think that we also highlighted before this game the ability of Speedy Williams and Bolu Akinyote, the two central midfielders for the Miami, and how important they were not just to this team, but how good of a player each of them is. So we were able to pretty much shut them down as much as we were not able to really build in the center of the midfield. They were we're not either. Florian Valot is a very important player in Miami's plans. And Carlos, I feel like we shut him down pretty much out of this game. He was not heavily involved.
For sure.
And is that something that you saw as well? Before we get into the goal specifically, did you see anything different that you wanted to highlight outside of these broad strokes that we've gone through on the tactics?
No, I just really want to reemphasize. I mean, we'll talk about our goals here in a little bit that I really want to mention because there's a lot of important characters that shine through offensively in the second half. But with regards to what you mentioned, I just want to reemphasize how notable it was in the fact that we were able to like cut off their passing lanes very well in that first half. We've mentioned it a lot before. I mean, Miami is a team that did not necessarily start super well, but has had a really good close to the season. They've been scoring pretty good amount of goals. They have a lot of different goal scorers, different threats that can score. In this particular case, it was Rivas, but they also have, like you said, players like Below and as well as their main goal scorer, Kyle Murphy. They have a lot of guys that can score. And I think what was noticeable is that, even though you mentioned Lewis Hilton and Nicky Law, these are guys that could not really get things set up offensively in the first half. It was noticeable that they, in conjunction with, our back line, were able to kind of stifle the Miami attack. Like there wasn't really anything going from Miami offensively. I can't really think of a moment in the first half that shines through as a dangerous moment for Miami. It really wasn't.
No, yeah. It was definitely well held down.
Yeah, as much as, like you said, we didn't have any. Well, there were a couple good chances for us in the first half. Nothing like insanely dangerous that should have been a goal 100%. But it definitely felt like, 0-0 was the right score going into halftime. You know what I mean? There wasn't really a moment where I would say, oh, Miami should have scored this, or we really should have scored that. But I think that's definitely a testament to how adaptable our team has been, and how we've been able to feel out games like this in the past and come out strong in the second half. And, knock in 3 goals in 45 minutes is not something small or easy to do by any means. But we've been able to do that. And I think this is really a impressive game on Neil Collins's record, because of, like we've been talking about, it was kind of slow. It was dicey in the first half, moments of lots of tension, potential missed red cards, et cetera, et cetera. But Neil came out, Neil definitely, said something in the second half, or in the locker room coming out in the second half, and definitely seemed to adjust well. Deon Harris, like you mentioned, was somebody that doesn't usually start in that role, doesn't usually start at all, actually. He's been more of a super sub. I've advocated for him maybe to get more minutes in past episodes, but I would have never imagined he would start like this, in that wing role, in the first playoff game against Miami. So really good job to him for playing a pretty decent game, causing chaos like he always does. And I think, kudos to Neil for trusting his players to step up in big moments, even players that might have not played most of the season. So really impressive win overall. But again, I'll save my comments on our offense for later on. But just to mention this, I mentioned the potentially missed red card. I see you noted this down here in our notes, James. I really like the way you phrase this. What does a guy have to do to get a red card against us lately? I mean, that was a wild game, particularly in the first half. And there were some moments in the second half that could have been dicey and might have deserved a couple of yellows as well that were missed. This ref, I don't know who it is. I don't know if they have a bad track record. I really don't. But this was a very poorly refereed game. Like it was chaotic. There could have been injuries. It really was a little scary to watch when some of our guys went down. What happened there, and why weren't there more red cards, James? This is wild.
Yeah, and I think this follows up, especially after last week, which everyone listening will note the New York Red Bulls 2, our opponent, did receive a red card, but that was well into the second half after they had made multiple challenges that, if not, a straight red, if they weren't worthy of that, then they were still worthy of 1 yellow, and then that same guy would have got a second yellow anyway. So, it's been very frustrating. Now, the one that you're referring to, Deon Harris, actually, and Eureka and I, when we were back in the in the bottom of the stadium there waiting for the press conference. We were able to overhear Deion Harris talking about what happened to him.
Sure.
And the opposing player, ultimately, he jumped up with his studs up, and I kept doing this for everyone who missed it that was around me. So pardon to all the fans who were sitting behind me that kept seeing me stand up and put my leg in the air with my feet up. But I was literally trying to show them, like, somebody jumped up like a velociraptor and dragged his studs down Deion Harris's knee. And when he went in after the game, he was saying, this is what we overheard, that he had a contusion from this, giant drag down his knee. And then worse than that, the player actually didn't even get a yellow card for this.
Right.
The replay was right on the big screen, and the crowd sees it all again, and they all start booing as loud as they can. The referee, I don't know if he missed it again, or if he, couldn't admit that he had gotten this wrong and totally ignored it. But it was absolutely absurd. Eureka and I were talking at the halftime interval, and I was under the assumption that Deion Harris would have to go out because he was down for so long. But he actually kept playing in the second half. So the one thing that you could tell from this is that absolutely led to the emotional state that the Rowdies were in. Yeah. Like you had mentioned earlier, Neil Collins goes into the dugout for the halftime whistle, and he is waving his arms. He's screaming at the crowd, "Come on, come on!" Like he's Braveheart or something.
Right,
but
right.
It was
Scottish
it was
accent
like
a little bit, but yeah, I get the
idea.
idea.
Exactly. But he was, everybody felt the tension from how this game was going, because for somebody to get away with that is ridiculous. But beyond just that, it was really absurd that they were going this far and the Rowdies were not kind of getting something out of it, like even if that was just them dropping down a man. But another thing that you said is he meant, this obviously buoyed them at halftime. They came out and things were a little bit adjusted. So one thing that happened was Aiden Stanley, the left back who was sitting deeper in the first half, he actually stepped forward a little bit more. And this, partly this comes courtesy of John Morrissey at USL Tactics. So I do want to shout him out because he's obviously got a very good breakdown. And it was something that I had written in my notes, but nowhere near as well as he had put it. So I'll just shout him out here. But Aiden Stanley had stepped forward. And, that meant that our guys in the middle of the field had to step out a little bit wider at times. So that would be Lewis Hilton and Nicky Law. And they had to kind of step out of the position that they were in previously. That allowed Florian Velo to get a little bit more into the play. And when he steps forward to get the ball from his center backs, then Robert Castellanos, who was usually marking him, has to go with him. And that allowed a little bit more space to open up. So that led to two big chances for Miami. One of them they actually converted, and one of them Kyle Murphy had put over the bar. So, we obviously have to thank Kyle Murphy for missing that one. But at the same time, there were a couple of things here and there that changed in the second half based on, the tactics of the first half and how intense that first half was. And then going into, the rest of the half, Jake LaCava did drop back to apply pressure to that Aiden Stanley at left back. And, that kind of changed things up, and it kept the Rowdies in a very condensed position where our defense was able to handle pretty much everything that came their way outside of those two big chances. I would say we really did a very good job at both organizing, staying organized, and making any, last ditch tackles if and when they were necessary. Now, we've talked about this a little bit. Let's talk about the goals here. We saw some tenacity and we saw some quality on them. So Sebastian Guenzati had 2 goals on the night, a slide tackle to regain possession on the first, and the second goal. In fact, let's start with the first goal here. So one of the Miami center backs, Paco Craig, is exiting his back line with the ball at his feet. And he's just a little too slow to get away from Sebastian Guenzati, who slides in, like you said, written here, and he taps it away. Then it gets played forward back to Leo Fernandez, who is able to dribble it to the top of the box. Leo Fernandez can kind of, shove a guy off of him and make sure that he can keep the ball at his feet. He turns it back and he gets a shot off, but it gets deflected. And the goalkeeper can only get a hand on it, pushing it right into Sebastian Guenzati's path, who smashes it home. And Carlos, we were all losing our mind, I got to say, when it went in the crowd.
No, I can imagine. I mean, looking back at the game, it was something I meant to mention on Twitter actually. Like, quick side note. I mean, the fan noise and atmosphere, and like, how they like to say in England and whatnot, the limbs have been like so much more like noticeably better this year, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm like jumbling my words. Like, at least on the TV broadcast, like everybody looked like they were going insane when that first goal went through. Like, arms were flying, beer was in the air. The ball boys were like absolutely losing it. It was wild. It seemed like it looked like the final or something like that. I swear, it felt really, really cool to see. It felt like a different atmosphere and an energy than a regular season game, as it should, obviously, because it's the playoffs. But this was, I mean, oh my goodness, it just was really cool to watch on ESPN Plus. But apart from that, like, more to the like, stuff on the field, I me, like, I'm a huge Sebastian Guinzotti fanboy. I love this man to death. He showed such grit, like, on both that first and second goal, and throughout the game. Like, he's not. It's really interesting to see him play because he's not just like the normal striker that'll kind of sit there. He's not the target man that'll wait for the ball to come to him and hold up, the ball and wait for runners to make their run down the wings or whatever. Like, he goes to the ball, and sometimes it drops him down into the our own half a little bit too much for his own good. But other times, like in the case of this first goal, um, the grit to like get down there and chase down Paco Craig, slide tackle, and get the ball back, heading the other way on a quick counterattack was so impressive. And Leo Fernandez, Fernandez wouldn't end up on like the score sheet today or log an assist officially. But he was impressive as well on that first goal. I mean, it was a very tough situation.
Oh,
It's like
of course. Yeah.
3 guys around him to hold one of them off a little bit, and just barely do enough to get a shot off with his left foot to cause a bit of problem in the box. And obviously, it would eventually lead to a Guinzotti goal. Maybe he's a little slow to see Guinzotti and could have passed the ball off earlier to an open Guinzotti, but nonetheless, like, having 3 guys around him and being able to get that ball off at all is really impressive. So really, really nice first goal. And again, the energy on that was so fun to watch from TV. You could see all the boys were ecstatic, and Ralph's mob was just insane. So really good noise on the broadcast.
I think that outburst came from just the way that the first half had gone and how mad the crowd was with,
For sure.
I got to say it, the refereeing decisions. I feel like it's a big cliche, especially in soccer, to blame the referee. And there are a lot of, calls that players are diving and this and that. There was no diving on those plays. People
Right.
were right to be upset. But, when we got kind of the payoff for all of the suffering that had gone on the first half, man, everybody absolutely ate it up. It was awesome. But
Yeah.
so that takes us into the Miami goal that they scored. So let's talk about that very quickly here. This came from that portion of play where Aiden Stanley had stepped up a little bit more than he was in the first half.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Robert Castellanos had left his position. So from there, actually, it was a big switch out to the right, or to the left wing, excuse me. It came to Joaquin Rivas on the left wing, and he had not the best first touch, so it kind of fell to Connor Antley. Connor Antley, I got to say, did not make a good decision on this. It all happened very quickly, as it tends to in the middle of the game. But yeah, looking back on the highlights there, I'm not really sure what Antley's idea was on the clearance there. It was kind of straight up, and it ended up landing right in the middle of our penalty box. And just a very weird decision. So that was his attempt at a clearance. Joaquin Rivas had rounded him and then got up to Lawrence Wyke, who was under the ball as it started to fall. Joaquin Rivas put his hand on Lawrence Wyke's shoulder and tried to get him out of the way. Now, I got to say, in the middle of it, I thought, oh my God, that's a foul. There's no way that's not a foul. How is that even a goal? When he got on the other side of Wyke, because Wyke had fallen down from this, and Rivas put it away. Now, looking back, I will say I guess I agree with fans there when it comes to charges of diving. I don't think that was a foul on Lawrence Wyke at all. I think that it was just good playing from Joaquin Rivas, and Joaquin Rivas is, a worthy beneficiary on that play. He did well. It was weird decisions from both Connor Antley and Lawrence Wyke in the end, and I think that they kind of, tried to play by the skin of their teeth towards the very end of the play when Rivas actually put it in. But that just came down to bad mistakes. And, I think that the two of them there will be able to look at this and say, well, those were obviously the wrong decisions, not least for the fact that we gave up a goal on it. And hopefully they'll be able to approach things differently in the future. But that was the one really negative play. Obviously, the other big chance that Miami had to score was put over by Kyle Murphy. It was a similar situation where Robert Castellanos was out of the position where he was usually supposed to be because Valo had stepped forward and he was chasing him. But yeah, that is how that one went in. And then, Carlos, let's move on from that. Let's get into the second goal that the Rowdies scored, the one that put us up 2-1 and the actual winner of the game. Because this one, I think, if this wasn't on SportsCenter Top 10, I don't know, but it should at least be the USL Championship goal of the week. I will definitely come out and say that right now.
Yeah, that was an absolutely wild goal. It was, a very simple lead up. It was just a corner kick, bounced out eventually to Nicky Law, who I don't know. I just never would expect something like that from Nicky Law. It doesn't seem like the player to do that. But I guess I'm seeing the goal scoring side of him now as he just ripped a shot that stayed low and kind of slowly rose up. But by the time, Miami's goalie could see it, it was already in the back of the net. It was so quick, the broadcast couldn't even keep up with the ball. It was just it literally was a wild goal. By the time the camera got out to where Nicky Law was, the ball was already in the net. It was just an insane thing to witness. And this is going on in me and my friends who I've slowly converted into Rowdies fans in my apartment just went
there we go.
Absolutely mental here. It was so fun to watch, and I could not believe it. Really, it was the only way to describe it. I could not believe that went in. And Nicky Law, I just again to shout out him, he's shown us that he not only can keep up physically with the young guys in the USL. He was sprinting very, very well, and when he needed to, and kept up with the speed of play at this level. But on top of that, his goal scoring side is a new side that I just did not expect to see from this man. He seems to know what to do defensively. He knows when to track back, knows how to distribute a ball well. Obviously as a center midfielder, but this is a side that I would love to see shine through next week in Memphis as well. I've always wanted somebody who can kind of rip a shot from outside the box. We never really have had somebody who can be that dangerous with that kind of thing. Lewis Hilton occasionally shines through with a shot outside the box. But if Nicky Law can keep up that pressure and keep a goalie on his toes, unsure about whether he's going to rip a shot from outside the box or not, we could have another serious scoring guy on our hands here. Not that he's going to score Leo Fernandez level goals, or amounts of goals, but that was just so impressive to watch. So I'm going on a tangent here about Nicky Law, but the reason we brought him up is because of this goal, but I want to highlight how well he's been playing for us and how well he played in this particular game, at least in the second half, when they kind of figured out what they were doing with regards to how to approach Miami. It was really, really impressive to watch.
Yeah, no, he's definitely worthy of mention right now. It's got the all the marks of a top signing.
Right.
A hell of a trade that Neil Collins pulled off there, and we all love Juan Tejada, but man, to replace him is tough. If you're going to replace him with somebody, I'm so psyched that it was Nicky Law. I'll just put it that way. But
Sure.
So that's the second goal. Carlos, let's talk about the final goal that the Rowdies scored here, because I think that it also is worthy of mention, naturally, because it's a goal and those are important, but also it was very well done. So this one also came off a corner, and I'd like to highlight, once we're done with these individual goals themselves, how good it is that we're getting, some goals off of set pieces again. That's great. But let's cover the goal very quickly before we do that. Dayon Harris takes it quick. short one to Nicky Law, I believe it was, who put it into the box. And then it gets cleared by a really horrendous header by Paco Craig. He did not catch that the way that he wanted to. I'll tell you that right now. But it bounces once to Sebastian Guenzati, who does it on the half volley, almost a scissor kick. It was beautiful, and he put it into the side netting on the far post, past everybody. It was wonderful to see. Sebastian Guenzati is rounded into his top scoring form. Nicky Law is putting these balls in left and right, whether they're shots or crosses. And who can stop us when we're in this type of form at home? It's great to see.
Yeah. That was such an impressive finish, really. I mean, like the reaction time you need to be able to strike that so, perfectly, efficiently right into the top corner. Oh, like it was beautiful to watch and almost a scissor kick, like you said. But I mean, I think that's what Guenzati brings to the table more than anything. And that's what I think he's starting to do again is, he's not like the fastest guy on the field, but he always knows where to be. And if you're, our opponent and you make a mistake like that, where you head the ball to Guenzati for whatever reason off a corner kick, you just mess up.
Yeah.
That is going to cost you. And what we need at, that main striker position is somebody who can make them pay. Guenzati, maybe earlier in the season, could not really do that. He was struggling to find that form. But I think he's getting back to that position where he can make the other team pay if you make a mistake. And every team's going to make a mistake. There's not one team that will be perfect for 90 minutes. I think our mistake, we made a couple mistakes, and one of them led to a goal. As well as we played, we did give them a goal off a pretty silly mistake on our part. If we can capitalize on those mistakes, if Guenzati can keep up that form, I mean, this is going to be an exciting playoff run, hopefully. It really can be. And I think Guenzati is getting hot. I know Guenzati is getting hot at the right time here in the middle of the playoffs.
Yeah. I am absolutely feeling so good about where he is right now. But those were the individual goals. I think that it was worth it to go over those one by one because of not only how they broke down the game in terms of a tactical breakdown, but also because of what they mean for the team, who scored them, how. And let's go back to the how really quickly here. Carlos, the Rowdies have made a habit in years past, mostly, of scoring off of set pieces and doing pretty well on that. I think that Forrest Lasso even had a very good goal scoring record by the time he left here just because of the goals that he scored off of corner kicks. Now, I don't know how frequently we've been able to say that this year. I would say that it's definitely much less. I don't have specific figures in front of me. I suppose we could have compiled that, but unfortunately, I would definitely say that it feels like, without having those numbers, it feels like we are not scoring as many off the set pieces. Turns around this past game, we've got one off of pressing, which is something that the Rowdies score off of pretty frequently, I would say, and then 2 goals off of set pieces. That has got to leave us feeling pretty good. I know it does for me.
For sure. Yeah, and it's not like we don't really have like the biggest team size-wise per se. I think that showed against Miami, and Miami has a pretty large, team in the back line, like pretty tall players. But the fact that 2 of our goals came off of corner kicks is really impressive in spite of that. Because they're not necessarily the, goals like straight off of headers off the one cross directly. But I think we're figuring out how to cause enough chaos in the box to where, like I said, the other team's going to make a mistake. We capitalize on said mistake, or, enough chaos happens in the box where we find the chance and we have enough guys in there for someone to finish. I mean, I think Jordan Scarlett had a couple moments like that earlier this year towards the end of the season, where he just found the ball at his feet off of a corner kick. I think we're starting to find that again, and I think that's going to be super helpful if we can keep that up. But honestly, like if I don't think we really need the corners too much, because I think we're finding a spot. We're back in like a form where it just doesn't seem like we're struggling to score goals right now. So if the corners work, if the set pieces work, even better, honestly. But I think we're going to be fine no matter what on the goal scoring side of things. We just have to play our game. I'm going to save this for the preview in a little bit. But really, like, seeing this team not struggle to score it's really fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
Three goals in the second half, so fun. And it, like I said, it's just very impressive that two of those came off of corners, despite Miami being such a large team, especially on their back line. So really, really impressive game on that side of things, and I'm excited to see what this offense can do next week.
Yeah. I am definitely feeling better about the offense, I think, than I have in a while. And not just, there are 8-0 games in our recent past, but
Yeah,
we're also doing it against good teams. We're doing it against El Paso, who was challenging for the playoffs. We're doing it against Miami, who was in the playoffs.
right.
It's meaningful games. It's not just the team that's about to leave USL so that they can go play other 15-year-old teams. But yeah, it's pretty good. I'm feeling great about it. So, Carlos, is there anything else you want to hit before we do our final question here, which I think is going to be a little bit longer, but probably worth it?
I will say, just to mention this really quickly, Phil Breno, he had, I mean, maybe you can argue that he could have done better on that Rivas goal. And he could have. I mean, he got a hand to it and it just slipped by. I think he needs to be a little bit stronger there, a little more stout to hold that ball out, because he did make pretty good contact with it, just could not hold it up as the ball just slowly and dramatically rolled in to the goal. Overall, had a decent game though, so I'm still not totally worried. I know we brought this up last week. Not super worried yet about Breno and his ability to keep us in games. I just hope that next week, if we're in a position where Memphis is peppering us a little bit, he can hold up a little bit better than he did against that Rivas chance. So just something to mention, because we've mentioned this before. Breno, decent game, but definitely room for improvement, and hopefully we can see that as the playoffs go on.
Yeah, I think you could make a slight argument either way. The fact that he was kind of left out to dry and got a hand on it at all is pretty good. But then the
Sure.
fact that you're like, well, he got a hand on it, maybe he should have got a stronger hand on it. You could
Right.
probably go either way on that one. I definitely feel you there.
Right. That's all I have to say there, to be honest. Just something to mention, given that we've brought him up in past episodes.
Absolutely. That makes sense. All right. So, Carlos, I want to do one more question here, which actually applies not just to this game, but to the preview, which we're going to be doing in 2 seconds here. Now, I guess we can go a little long on questions and analysis because we don't have a standings to go over,
Right,
but that's
right.
fine. The last question that I have here is, what is the best group of attackers the Rowdies can start a game with right now? So let's just go ahead and assume, for the sake of argument, that we're doing what we usually do, and let's have 3 at the back. And, those 3 can be, I don't know, Guillen, Castellanos, and Wyke, like it has been last game, or maybe other guys. I'm not entirely sure. Let's just move it forward. Let's go the wing backs. Who's on the wing backs? Who do you feel most comfortable there, and who's up top? I'm assuming Leo Fernandez and Sebastian Guenzati are somewhere up there. Probably Jake LaCava too, but I want to see what you think here, because this was a question that I had in my head just like over the weekend, not even like in preparation for this. I was just thinking about it actually while I was at my desk at work, because I'm working for a month straight here with this hurricane. But yeah, this is something that I was thinking about, and I wanted to get your opinion.
Yeah, I think my ideal attack would look somewhat similar to what we had this past weekend. Dayon Harris on the wing as a starter was maybe the only thing that I don't even know if I would change it, really. Like, Dayon Harris
Well,
was
as you said,
impressive.
it's something you've been calling for.
Yeah, maybe this is a situation where like Dahlgaard has been playing so well all season that it's hard for me not to include him in the starting 11. But then again, he wasn't listed in the 18 at all this past week. Maybe dealing with a light injury or something like that. So who knows? In that case, I'm starting Dayon on the wing, as we did this past week. Antley is like Antley has been playing really well. There's no need to discredit him for that. He's been playing decent, but again, we've had a couple instances in past games now where he has made the mistake that leads to a goal. Can I knock him for like one mistake this past game? I'm not sure. Jake Arman is on the bench, and he has been on the bench the past couple games. He is back in the roster. I would like to see him get some playing time, but with that being said, he still is also coming off of an injury. So I'm not going to change anything from the Miami game. I'm keeping Antley in for now as well. Maybe giving Armin some more minutes next game, though, depending on what the situation is. And then with the front three, I mean, I'm just really repeating the Rowdies Miami lineup at this point because I don't want to change what's working. Guenzati as the central striker, as the main striker, is currently working, and I'm not going to change that. 2 goals, and he's in goal scoring form right now, and that's what you need from your striker. That's his only job, is to be in the right position and score goals. You can't take out Leo Fernandez, obviously. He's staying there. And then LaCava, like, I want just something a little more from LaCava. I really like, he is so close to breaking through again and being at that form that he was earlier this year. But again, I don't really see anybody that I could replace LaCava with in the starting 11. Dos Santos is a really, really great player. But if he's starting, you would have to kind of, I don't know, you'd have to either take out LaCava or Guenzati and move Dos Santos like the main striker position and shift Guenzati out to the wing. And Guenzati just has not played well in that wing role when he's come in and played that role earlier this year. So it's hard for me to change the lineup at all. I just went through all of that just to say I wouldn't really change the attack from what it was against Miami. And then the midfield, the same thing. I mean, Nicky Law, you can't take him out right now. He's in great form. The only question mark is with Lewis Hilton, who also had a good game, but I think there were moments in the game where you could see he was struggling just a little bit, maybe still dealing with that injury from last week. But then again, he played all 90 minutes, and I think Neil Collins would be wise enough to take him off if it was a major issue. So, but with that being said, you have really good options on the bench, including Junior Etu, who has been impressive in this back end of the season. So, like I said, I just went through all of that just to say at this moment in time, I can't change anything because what's working is working. The guys that are on the field are in form. I mean, we scored 3 goals without Leo Fernandez scoring one of those goals, which has not happened much this year because he's always on the score sheet. So it's just impressive. If we can score those 3 goals without Leo Fernandez and then add in Leo, a couple goals from him, you're talking about like 5 goals in the game. The production offensively is just, it's already there. Like, I don't know what else you can change, really. I'm sure you bring it up because you might change something. So I'm curious as to what you have to add here. Would you change anything at all, or am I, repeating the same sentiment as you?
So, Dayon Harris, you brought him up a lot that you would like to see him starting. And I think that I have been a little bit frustrated with Dayon Harris when he gets on the field only in his final production. I think that he is very good at, running at a player and unbalancing a back line. Yeah. I think that what is the problem for him, especially, is when he gets to a point where he's past a defender, he doesn't always know the best thing to do. He has proven, especially in this past game, I got to say, that he is not only able, but not only willing, but able to get back and help out on the defense. And he does that. He does that well when he is, when he's dialed in and focused. He can definitely help out there. The only issue now, like I said, was possibly the final production. I think that he really went a ways with dispelling that issue if it exists in this past game against Miami. So maybe the problem that I have seen it is that he's been playing on the wrong wing. It's possible that he just needs to be out on the left, and we haven't seen him a ton there. It's mostly been on the right, like I said earlier today. But I think that if he can keep it up the way that he did in this past game, he absolutely deserves a starting spot. So, for now, I'm going to say Dayon Harris keeps the start. I would probably say Antley stays in right now just because Sebastian Dalgard apparently, this was a knock that Neil Collins forgot to go over until the end of the pregame press conference. So, if he's available, then, that's one thing. But if he's not available, obviously, Sebastian Dalgard can't even, he can't even be in the discussion. So it would be Connor Antley by default. And then up top, Jake LaCava, Sebastian Guenzati, and Leo Fernandez are, the very obvious picks here. I don't have a problem with them as they are. The only thing, like you said, is just that I think Jake LaCava does need to get back into the same form that he was in previously. He is, he's not quite where we have seen him, and he's not, doing what we know he's capable of doing. But, right. I would love to see him get into it a little bit more. He did a lot of tracking back this past game, and he added to our ability to, do that press when we do not have possession. And I think that is a hallmark of this Rowdies team. It is so important to how we play, and it led to one of our goals in this game. So yeah, I think that he is definitely mobile enough to do that. Now, we'll get into the midfield a little bit later when I want to do the preview, because there are points specifically related to how we can handle Memphis's midfield, and that will be then. But yeah, at this point, Dayon Harris might not continue to get the start, and we'll see who would.
Yeah.
Jake Arman, like you said, he is back. Sebastian Dalgard is a question mark, and then Leo Fernandez can play at left wing back, but they just haven't wanted to because he's been doing so well.
Yeah.
I love that Sebastian Guenzati offers as much running and as much pressing as he does. So I loved this. I loved this attack in this game against Miami, and maybe we stumbled onto something by Neil Collins, just moving Harris to the other side.
For sure. Yeah, I think you touch on it well, that really the only thing that I would change, and that's really if it's possible, is getting Dalgard back in the lineup, because if he's healthy,
exactly.
Yeah, if he's healthy, we've seen it this year. He's been such a revelation this season. Like, he can score goals, he can create assists, he can dribble. It feels like his production is just, much higher than where it was at this point last season. And it would be a huge asset to have him back going into Memphis, even as a bench option. If he's not really full 90 minutes fit, he's somebody that can come in and maybe not on the same level as Dayon Harris, just come in and create chaos, but he's somebody that can, put a couple assists on the board for him and create some chances in a different way that Dayon Harris may or may not be able to. So yeah, good stuff. And just excited to see where we can go with this offense, with this attack.
Oh man, it is very exciting time. So, all right, Carlos, let's do our man of the match and end this questions and analysis segment here. Who was your man of the match for this game?
Easy. It's Guenzati. 2 goals.
I assumed.
it's. I mean, I can't not pick him. 2 goals in a playoff game, and 2 really impressive goals too. I can't not pick him. I mean, he was in the right spot at the right time for the first goal. Really great finish off that like half volley corner kick. And the fact that he was involved on both the first and second goal with, that heart that I think characterizes a team captain and a team legend. The slide tackles, tracking back. Yeah, I think that's where Rowdies fans find their love for him, not necessarily just his goal scoring ability, but his heart on the field. He leaves it all out there. And in this particular game, he left it all out there and he produced results. So I can't not pick him. So I'm taking Guenzati as my man of the match.
Yeah, Sebastian Guenzati is, I think, the most obvious shout that we have had in a while. But for me, I'm going to switch it up here just for the sake of it, because you have obviously chosen Sebastian Guenzati. I'm going to go with somebody that really impressed me and somebody that I'd like to see take up his same position that he did in this past game. Somebody who got a cleat run down his leg and continued to play. Dayon Harris. He was dynamic. He held Miami's defenders in check, and he caused them problems. And not only all of the things that we're used to from him, but we did see a lot of good delivery. He was involved in the buildup to the third goal. It was a short corner, so not much involvement. But hey, you got to do it, right? He got the cross in there, so I definitely like Dayon Harris for this game, and I think that his positioning is possibly a little bit of its own revelation. We're going to see how the rest of the playoffs play out, whether or not we even move on. But yeah, Dayon Harris for me is how it would be.
Easy. Yeah, really great shout for Dayon as well. Despite not getting on the stat sheet necessarily with a goal or an assist, he's always causing problems. And I think, despite me appealing for more starts for him, I think that's what also makes him such a great super sub, is that in moments where things are a little slow, maybe it's 0-0 and there's kind of slow production, he can just come in and cause chaos, cause a mistake for the other team, and have a Guenzati be there to finish and capitalize on that mistake. So really exciting to see how he's playing, and hopefully he can keep up a good run of form for next week. With that being said, James, let me quickly mention this before we talk about our conference semifinal preview. So liking and subscribing is free, but if you need some new threads, you can support this podcast by heading over to shop shop.rblrsports.com. That's shop.rblrsports.com. And checking out all the cool designs we've cooked up on the website. Lots of really cool shirts, little designs and stuff on there to show your Tampa Bay sports pride, not just for the Rowdies, but for all your Tampa Bay sports teams, including the Bucks, Lightning, Rays, and even the Bandits. So go show some support over there for all your Tampa Bay sports team and for this RBLR podcast. Using the promo code COYR, you can get 10% off your order. So definitely go check everything out over there. And with that being said, James, here we are. It's Monday night. Long week ahead of us. You know, the work week might be looking tough, but there's something we have to look forward to at the end of this week, James. And I am obviously talking about the Tampa Bay Rowdies Eastern Conference semifinal game away to Memphis. And I know we'll have some fans traveling out there, but James, I could not be more excited for this game. Quick spoiler alert, I think this is a very winnable game. I'm very excited for this game, and I'm hoping we can go over there and shut down what was a pretty good crowd this past weekend from Memphis.
Yeah, I think that we can win this game, like you said. I think it's going to be a tough one. Obviously, you know, they finished ahead of us in the standings. You don't get there by being a crap team or anything, but it's probably better than us having to go away against Louisville immediately. Now, if we were to get past this game, and I don't want to even put it in those terms yet because that's wish casting. You know, it's possibly putting a jinx on us if you believe that. But you know, if we were, then we would most likely end up going to play Louisville in the end. I still think that this is going to, you know, be a good one to start us off on that potential away trip. You know,
for sure. This will be exciting. This will be so exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, James, I'll let you take over the preview here because I know you have a lot of tactical breakdown stuff that simply, to be honest, might go over my head. So you take it away from here, James. I'm excited to talk about this game.
Absolutely. Well, like we were saying, because of results this past weekend, we are going away to Memphis. They were able to beat their opponent, and they won 3-1. So, you know, obviously a little bit of convincing fashion, and it wasn't anything that they. It was a little dicey at times for Memphis, but they were able to move on, and now we have to deal with them too. So, yeah, they are unbeaten in their last 4 games. They are unbeaten at home in their last 4 games. I should make that mention because it's not just their last 4 games. But yeah, at home, they do have a pretty good record, obviously, and that is something to worry about. Though, to be fair, we also have a unbeaten run of 6 right now. Now, Memphis's last game against Detroit City that they just won and ended up playing us. That is where they won 3-1. And the way that game went, they went up 1, just like we did. Then Detroit City leveled it, just like happened with us. And then Memphis ended up getting 2 late goals. So a kind of familiar story there for those of us who saw the Rowdies game. Anyway, let's move into how Memphis actually lines up. So they mostly play with 4 at the back. Those are frequently Patrick Segrist, Reese Buckmaster, Graham Smith, and Derek Dodson in front of Trey Muse. Sometimes Zach Carroll or Niall Logue will be in there. So some interesting names and some people who should be relatively familiar to Rowdies fans, especially Derek Dodson, I'm sure, especially to you, Carlos, as a Georgetown student. So yeah, those are guys that we'll need to watch out for. In front of them, you will find the very important duo of Aaron Malloy and Leston Paul. Shutting these 2 players down is going to be crucial to us trying to actually win this game. Jeremy Kelly will often be the guy up on the left wing, with Dylan Borchak, Laurent Kisidou, and former Rowdy Luis Fernando all showing up in different positions, attacking behind the striker. And the striker is someone that we will also need to keep an eye on. That is Philip Goodrum. He is leading their scoring charts right now with 22 on the year. That is very impressive because if you think about the Rowdies' highest goal scorer, Leo Fernandez, he does not have 22. Despite how much he has scored and despite how well he's done, he is not quite on the same level as Philip Goodrum, at least in that setting. Now,
Right.
Goodrum is a recent college grad and played for Atlanta United 2 last year before joining Memphis. Jeremy Kelly and Aaron Malloy each have 8 goals, while they both also have 10 assists. So those are the 3 that we're really going to have to keep an eye out on in terms of their goal scoring. Obviously, goals can come from anyone, but those are the guys who have really been racking it up this year. So they are going to be the danger players for them, and shutting them down again is going to be our key. Now, how can we do that? Making sure Goodrum and Kelly are generally well marked is going to be a good start for us. I think that Robert Castellanos is going to have his hands full with Philip Goodrum. And, we'll probably end up seeing him step onto Lawrence Wyke or Aaron Gein at different times, provided they are the starters. And Jeremy Kelly, it depends on who's at right wing back. If Sebastian Dalgard is not fit, as he was not this past game, then it'll most likely fall to Connor Antley. Connor Antley, I generally trust to mark well, but he has every so often had these weird little game-defining mistakes in moments. So I'm hopeful that his marking will come through, and he certainly has speed to keep up with players on the wing. So I'm less worried about that one so much as I am a third player on this list that I was just talking about, Aaron Malloy. It'll be a little harder than just marking him out of the game naturally because of where he stands. He is usually in the center of the midfield and sits next to or in front of Leston Paul. Leston Paul is their defensive midfielder. You might think of him as a rough equivalent, not exactly the same player naturally, to Lewis Hilton. So Aaron Malloy will often start plays, and he will often also follow them late into the box and get on the end of the ball when it has come out, because it was cleared impartially, or because it was or only partially cleared, or if it was a cross that was actually meant for him, while there were dummy runs into the box and he was left open at the top of it. So we will definitely need to track him, but where we really want to start with Aaron Malloy is applying pressure to him before the play has actually gotten that far down the field. If we can prevent him from getting into the part of the field where he is running onto the end of crosses, all the better. During the game versus Miami, I expected that Harris would have to go out due to injury. I mentioned this before. He was doing very well beforehand, but what I expected to see when he went out was Leo Fernandez go to left wing back and Jan Ekra to step into the midfield. I expected Jan Ekra to do that because he was capable of applying the same pressure that we were trying to put on Bolu Akinyode and Speedy Williams. So that's not actually what happened until much later. Jan Ekra came on in the game. But what I would expect here, because Leston Paul is their central midfielder and, more on the defensive side, and Aaron Malloy is the creative presence, the guy who starts and ends plays, so to speak, I think that Jan Ekra will possibly be very important versus Malloy. And Paul, I expect him to start because he offers such a good presence when it comes to pressing. As Eureka and I love to beat this drum, but Jan Ekra came in last season, and when I first noticed it was a game against Charlotte. Now, Charlotte had brought in several guys who were on loan from the Charlotte FC MLS team before they actually got started. They included Premier League winner Christian Fuchs, a former Austrian international. And, this is a guy obviously with a very good pedigree. Jan Ekra was able to, bully him off the ball effectively, and he kept him on his toes all game. He kept him, really unable to start any plays, to get anything going offensively for Charlotte. And I think that we benefited from his ability to put pressure on Fuchs right before he goes to pass the ball, and then we would obviously try and win it right there. So I'm expecting that Jan Ekra might be able to reprise this role, not just when Memphis has the ball on their back line, but also when Leston Paul and Aaron Malloy have it in the midfield and they're trying to get something going. That's just what I'm guessing. Now, Obviously, things will possibly change. Nicky Law did have a fantastic performance, as we've already noted, against the Miami FC, and he might be able to do that again. This is just what I expect to see, and what I would personally prefer to see. I do not see what goes on in training or anything. Obviously, Neil Collins is the expert here, and I defer to him above all else. But that is just what I'm assuming. And if I can say that Ekra will, be able to shut them down, then I think that we're going to have a much better chance to win this game. And as you said, this is a winnable game. I definitely do believe that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention, going away from home, if we play our game and we're on the same form, like you said, we can win this, but having a backup goalkeeper is also very important here. Now, we go into the playoffs most of the games before this, we actually did not have a backup goalkeeper, as most people noted online. It was a little harrowing at times.
Right.
But Phil Breno has done well. It's not the case of replacing him that I'm worried about. It's the case of filling in if Phil Breno goes down. We've already had multiple injuries when it comes to goalkeepers in the past, and this year was CJ Cochran, obviously. Otherwise, Phil Breno would not even be starting. So having Reiko Rosarena back and having him on the bench is going to be super important for us. I think that it will be super important for Phil Breno to know that he can go out and apply the pressure that he needs to. If, say, Philip Goodrum has the ball and he's running into our box, you can go and apply the pressure to him. And if you get hurt, don't worry. We do have somebody who can come on afterwards. So that is my big preview, I guess, for the game against Memphis. But yeah, that covers all of our bases here. And it's time to get into our predicts, Carlos.
Yeah.
How do you think this game will go? I think I'm feeling a certain way about it. This has not always helped me. I will point that out. But I think I have a general idea of what I'm thinking for this game. You tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about our odds in this particular game. I've mentioned it before. I think it's a very winnable game. It's going to be a tough game. Obviously, Memphis is the 2 seed. They know how to play good soccer. They're playing at home. They are playing on that an embarrassment of a soccer field.
Yep.
It's so ugly to watch. It really is. Like, and even with the mound, especially, the ball does bounce a little bit strangely.
Oh, it does.
It rolls over. I don't know if you saw the Detroit goal against Memphis, but that was actually part of the reason Detroit got the goal. Not part of the reason, but it was a factor in that Detroit goal. As the ball was fed into the scorer, the goal scorer, the ball took a strange bounce off the dugout or off the mound and ended up in the right spot for Detroit. Long story short, we beat Memphis at home 2-0. They beat us away 3-1. I think that game was I don't want to say it was a fluke per se away at Memphis, but it was such a strange game because they scored within a minute off of a dumb mistake. And then we scored that crazy free kick, and then they scored 2 goals later on. It was a very strange game. It wasn't a normal game by any, stretch of the word normal. And I think we match up very well against this team. Like, really, watching the game against Detroit, they really struggled until very late in the game. Like, Detroit actually had a couple more maybe dangerous chances than Memphis even. Memphis just could not really find their footing until later on in the game. That's when they started to take over after they scored that first goal. But then Detroit, like you said, against similarly to our game against Miami, came back, scored their own goal, made it 1-1. And then Memphis had their second goal later on. It was a header off of a set piece. We know that they're a dangerous team in the air, so we got to be careful with that. And then their third goal was pretty much like the soccer equivalent of like an empty net goal in hockey, when the goalie was like halfway up the field and they just chipped it over. So 3-1 was the third goal, kind of like an asterisk, I guess. But that being said, I like our odds. I mentioned all of this to say that the 3-1 scoreline against Detroit might be a little bit generous for Memphis.
Probably.
And their 3-1 win against us was, a deserved win, but definitely a strange game. I say all that because I think we can go there. And like you said, if we play our game, we can definitely win. I think the biggest thing is that we don't get caught up in the trap that can happen sometimes when we go play a good team away and we kind of sit back a little bit too much. And by the time we try to reestablish ourselves, we're down 1-0. We just can't get a footing on the game. Memphis is going to want to play their game. They're going to want to establish their game early on, hold possession, and make it hard for us to even have the ball. I don't think we can let that happen and have a chance of winning. Like, we have to not allow that to happen if we want to win. And I think we will play our game. I think we'll play well. And I think Sebastian Guizzati keeps up his hot streak of goals, and Leo Fernandez gets back on the score sheet. And I think we win 2-1 away to Memphis.
Well, I certainly hope that we win. What I am predicting is not that we win outright, but that we do go through. I am feeling, and again, feeling has not always led me the right way, but I'm feeling a 1-1 draw through full time and extra time, and then we win on penalties. That's why I don't know where I'm getting this feeling. And hopefully it's a better one than the last time that I just went with my gut inkling, I guess. But yeah, we'll see. That's what I'm feeling for whatever reason.
It's reasonable. It's a reasonable pick, 1-1 against two pretty evenly matched teams. But genuinely, like I do think we have on paper just a better team, more firepower. I think playing away is always difficult. We have a pretty significantly worse record away than we do at home this year. Um, I think we can only hope that the team's matured out of that away slump. Our last away game, we did win 2-1 away in Monterey Bay. Uh, but even that was a game that was pretty tough to win against a team that's not that good per se. But again, Memphis is a good team. But like I said, I think we can go in there and win. I think your 1-1 prediction and then penalties is more than reasonable, given the matchups that we've had against Memphis and the home and away thing and just us playing away. I think 1-1 could very definitely happen. But I'm going to be a little more optimistic and say we get the win outright. Sebastian Rosati and Leo Fernandez get the 2 goals for us to win. So, with that said, James, could not be more excited. Any closing thoughts on this game against Memphis before we move on?
No, I am ready to go. I wish that it were sooner, but it'll come when it comes, and that'll give the boys a little more time to practice, get themselves prepared for whatever nuance that nuance they feel Memphis has to offer. Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
It will be exciting for sure. I'm excited. It's going to be a great game. Excited to watch them here. I wish I could be down there in Memphis. I'm sure it'll be a good atmosphere for them. They drew about 6,000 was the crowd last game against Detroit, so I'm sure it'll be around there. And I know we have a few people, more than a few people, making the trip up from Tampa Bay to Memphis. So looking forward to a good Rowdies crowd out there and an even better game. With that being said, James, let's move on into our extra time segment to wrap up the show. First of all, really kind of random news to me. I wasn't expecting this. I didn't see anything about this, but the USL Championship is going to Milwaukee in 2025. Very, very exciting. We'll have a new Eastern Conference rival, a new team to get ready to play. Always fun to go out to a new club, a new stadium, and see what they have to offer. I know that a new stadium is in the works for them as well, so that should be exciting. I don't remember if that'll be ready for their opening season or not, but either way, new season or new team, new location, new city, new venue is always very fun to see and to watch. So excited for that. James, anything to say on Milwaukee team? I'm curious as to what their team name is going to be.
Yeah, I actually checked into that, and there are a lot of people there who are offering silly names like the
Right.
Milwaukee Velociraptors, I guess. Somehow we have 2 Velociraptor mentions in this one episode, but
Sure.
yeah, it's one thing that I did see that I really liked. Apparently, Milwaukee has a couple of nicknames, and one of those is Cream City, one of those is Brew City. So I would like to see personally, just as someone who has never even been to Wisconsin, I would like to see Cream City SC or Brew City SC, because not only are those like they're a unique and original, but they are so far from like the MLS corporate BS like FC Dallas, Charlotte
Right.
FC.
Right.
Oh my God.
It
I just
sounds
want I want something that, they could have done so many other things with Charlotte. If you're incorporating a crown, make it Crown City, Royal, something. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
man. There's so many options. Just Charlotte FC is so boring. If they go with the boring thing and just call themselves FC Milwaukee, I'll fly to Wisconsin to riot with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll want to like I can see like a Milwaukee Brew kind of might be too similar to the Brewers though, to be fair. They do have their baseball team that's known as the Brewers. So we'll have to see what happens there, but definitely hoping for a creative name. There's a lot of cool stuff that Milwaukee's known for. Trying to think of what you can do with like cheese without it being weird. Like, what are you gonna Milwaukee Munster Cheese FC? I don't know. It'd be kind of strange, but nonetheless, none of that's important. There will be a team in Milwaukee and a new stadium, and that's the important part. New stadiums always great for the USL. Always fun to see. Makes me a little bit jealous, not necessarily about stadium, but Al Lang is a little old. Would love to see some renovations. Make it a little more modern. You know what I mean? It's still kind of stuck in the 1940s sometimes, but I think it gives it some charm.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
nonetheless, that's a little talk for another day. Maybe an off-season conversation with our Rays overlords.
Right.
Anyway, speaking of Eastern Conference opponents, let's briefly mention the playoff games on the rest of the playoff games in the Eastern Conference. I mean, we have the other, semifinal in the conference will be hosted by Louisville City. And they'll be playing against Pittsburgh in what will definitely be a fun matchup to see. We know Pittsburgh has beaten Louisville in their stadium over there in the past. Would love to see that happen again, to have
Oh
more
yeah.
home games, obviously. Yeah. But uh, I mean, I'll put my prediction out there. I just don't see it. Pittsburgh is not necessarily like fiery on all cylinders. They did have a crazy, crazy game against Birmingham that I want to mention here in a second. I just think Louisville outmatches them at home. It's going to be tough, but I mean, upsets aren't unheard of in the USL Championship playoffs. The one seed always seems to struggle, so I could definitely see an upset happening between Pittsburgh and Lou City here. But with that being said, James, did you see that Birmingham versus Pittsburgh game? That was chaotic, to say the least.
Yeah, so yesterday after I got home from work, I was a little tired. I ended up taking a nap, and that was against my better judgment because if I take a nap, I'm going to be up later. And
Sure.
ultimately, I was. So what do I do when I'm up later? I put on the Pittsburgh versus Birmingham game, and we go through the full 90 minutes, and it's tied. We go through the extra 30 minutes, and both teams score, but it's still tied.
Right.
It was pretty wild. And before we even get into the penalties, there is a collision between a player and the referee head to head. Both the referee and the player had to be substituted out in the end. It was something I have not really, I don't think I've ever seen. So they ended up pulling, or calling full time at 131 something minutes. I don't remember
Wow.
exactly what it was. It was 131 minutes and some seconds, with a new center referee. The fourth official, she came in and filled in for the main official who had to go out due to his head injury. So yeah, that was all wild. It gets into penalties. I believe it went all the way to the 10th round, right before the goalkeepers had to take penalties on each other.
Yep.
And so it started with the Pittsburgh goalkeeper saving the first penalty that he faced, then the second penalty that he faced. It gets into the fifth, it gets into the fourth round, and they're up 3-1. Pittsburgh is. Then the Birmingham goalkeeper saves one penalty. Then the Birmingham goalkeeper saves another penalty. And so it's tied. This is
Right.
going all the way into the 10th round of the penalties, like I said. And Edward Kiza, who had scored the 2 goals for Pittsburgh, actually scores the winning penalty to put them through to the next round. And this was in between interruptions from the Birmingham fans who were throwing what looked like novelty soccer balls, like I guess souvenirs onto the field at the players. And that continued when the game ended and Pittsburgh was all celebrating. There was a little interaction where one of the Pittsburgh players caught one of these souvenir soccer balls and threw it right back at the Birmingham fans. It was, man, there was everything that you wanted and probably a lot of stuff that you didn't in this game. But
Yeah.
that is how Pittsburgh progressed, and that is why they will be playing Louisville, who had the bye week this past weekend. It was wild. I mean, yeah, it was something else.
Yeah. Shout out to my boy Jamali Waite, the Pittsburgh goalie, for making the big saves in the penalty shootout and for playing an overall good game. I love to see him doing well. I've mentioned him in the past. I met him when he played for UConn versus Georgetown last year. We always give the other team's goalies way too much crap than a lot of them can handle. The Georgetown student section. But he was such a great sport when we played him, and ended
That's
up
good.
actually, he ended up actually becoming like, I mean, friends is a strong word for somebody we've met once at a soccer game, but he's somebody that followed a bunch of us back on Instagram and keeps up with the Georgetown student section for soccer. So we love Jamali, and it's really good to see him doing well. And who knows, maybe we can play him in the conference final, and that can be his enemy once again, just like that UConn game last year. So really good to see him doing well. Moving on from that, let's talk about briefly, just mention the other playoff games that'll be happening this week. We have San Antonio taking on Oakland. Oakland maybe causing a little bit of an upset in the first round, running
I
San
did not see
Diego.
that coming.
Yeah, running San Diego out of their own stadium. 3-0 win for Oakland against San Diego, who was the 2 seed out west. And according to, I'm forgetting which one the USL uses, but one of those companies that puts out the odds, San Diego was the, I think, number 4 team expected to compete for the USL Championship, for 4th best odds to win in the playoffs. And they were knocked out in the first round against a really good Oakland team. So we'll have to see if Oakland can take that momentum, take the upset down to Texas, and hopefully run San Antonio out of their own stadium. So best case scenario, we get to the final and we host the final. Wouldn't that be great? So yeah, San Antonio takes on Oakland at home, while Colorado Springs hosts Sacramento Republic, which will also be a very, very good game. Any predictions you want to make on those games, James? Because I'm not sure I can make them, because I'm not fully informed on the Western Conference very well. But I will say I would like to see Oakland obviously take the win against San Antonio.
Yeah, I'm not as informed naturally, just because we didn't play them as frequently. But to see Oakland beat San Antonio is not something that I think is a smart prediction, but it is something that I would love to see for the same reasons that you have already said.
Yeah.
And Sac Republic, if they beat Colorado Springs, that would also be good, because that would clear the 1 and 2 seed from the West. And also, I hate to say it because of the way that the game turned out, but I think Orlando City provided a blueprint for how to beat Sac Republic. So there's that too. There is a very suspect player on their back line when it comes to having the ball at his feet. So I would hope that Colorado Springs somehow doesn't know that, and Neil Collins does, if it ever came to it. But we'll have to cross several bridges before we even get to that possibility.
Several bridges. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see both San Antonio versus Oakland and Colorado Springs versus Sac Republic, who can go through there, because not only will it possibly affect us, but it is an indication of what's going on with the league, and what teams are doing what. Maybe even if you have some money on an upset here or there. I don't know, what betting companies are involved with the USL Championship. Maybe we'll get some Seminole Hard Rock Casino betting in the future.
Sure.
But I'm not too sure about it just yet.
Yeah. I will say, just to mention this, last time Oakland and San Antonio played in San Antonio, Oakland walked away with a 1-1 draw. They left with 1 point from San Antonio. So not unheard of for them to go in there and give them a challenge and come out with points. So we'll see if they can, who knows, maybe take it through the penalties and walk away with an upset there.
All right. Well, there we go. That is good news for somebody, hopefully us. Now, if you can get to the game, obviously, we ask that you do that, and you make sure you bring some green gold. Make sure that you can cheer on the boys while you're out there. But that's not going to be a ton of people. That's going to be a certain number of people, but it's not going to be everyone, because it is away. So I encourage everyone, if they can, instead to try to attend a watch party for this one. Now, I've been told from our producer, Eureka, that there is a watch party going on at, you guessed it, Corrigan's. And according to Mitchell, who everyone knows online, Mitch Loster, it's going to be at 8:30, a 20% off match day drinks. Now, that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. I think that I might get myself down there and see if I can possibly park where I usually do down from the stadium, get myself home in time to make it to work afterwards the next day. But I am. There's no way that I'm missing this one. I will tell you that. If you can go to a watch party, please do so. If you can organize one, if you can get everybody over to your house or apartment or whatever, that it's got to be good vibes. Got to be good vibes out in the ether, so that the Rowdies fans know that it's not just whoever can make it to Memphis that's cheering them on. And for everyone who does go to Memphis, and good on you. Good on you. I literally have to work both Saturday and Sunday. There's no way that I could do it, but there are people who are doing it, and that's awesome. So good luck to everyone that is traveling, and we will all be cheering for you as well back here from Tampa Bay. So that should do it. This has been a long one, Carlos, but I think we needed to touch on literally every sentence and every word that we stated so far. So let's go ahead and say thank you, listeners, for tuning in. You have gotten so far already. And if you have gotten this far, please go one step further and follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are at RBLR Sports. You can also follow me if you'd like. I'm at RBLR James K. Carlos, what about you?
Yeah, you can follow me at Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. Always tweeting, maybe getting me in trouble. Always tweeting a piece of my mind because I guess everybody has an opinion, yada yada. Post everybody's opinion on Twitter. My recent tweets are all just me being mad about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh my goodness. At least we have the Rowdies. That's all I have to say. At least we have the Rowdies here in Tampa Bay. We've had a great few years in Tampa Bay, but right now the team that's shining through is the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and only the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So I'm happy to be covering the best team in Tampa Bay right now, James.
There we go. I love that. So please also like and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple or Google Podcasts. We are on YouTube and all other major podcast platforms. So now, Carlos, for another away game, the Eastern Conference semifinal. As always, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.